Thomas was 24 years old and lived a very quiet life. He had been working the late shift at a local Burger King for about 2 years. It was not a glamorous job, but it paid his rent and the hours worked for him. He was a night owl anyway, so being behind the drive-through window from 10 in the evening until 4 in the morning did not bother him at all. His nights were usually routine, but all of that changed about a month ago. He was working the drive-through solo. The store was usually understaffed after midnight, and that was when a car pulled up to the speaker. A male voice, pretty unremarkable, ordered a large double Whopper with cheese meal with a Coke. When he went to pay, he only rolled the window down just enough to slide his card through. His windows were tinted, so Thomas could not see his face. He paid, and Thomas handed him his receipt. But then he just drove off without stopping at the second window to grab his food. Thomas waited with his bag for a few minutes, wondering if he would be coming back, but he never did. Eventually, Thomas just set the order aside and ended up eating it later. About a week later, it happened again. It was the same order and the same exact thing happened. Someone paid at the first window and then drove off before picking up the food. Thomas remembered thinking that someone did the exact same thing last week, but he was not quite able to connect the dots at that point. He just figured it was a coincidence. It was not until it happened a third time that he realized it was the same person making these orders. At that point, he knew something weird was going on, but he was not going to complain. The food was made, paid for, and he was the one who got to enjoy it. So he kept eating the free Whopper meals and tried not to think too hard about why some random dude was essentially buying him dinner every few days. This went on for a few more weeks. The guy would show up every 4 or 5 days, always late, usually between 1 and 3 in the morning, and always with the same order. Thomas started to almost look forward to it in a weird way, wondering if his mysterious benefactor was going to show up tonight. One night, Thomas was working the speaker at around 2 in the morning when he heard that familiar voice. He knew what was about to happen. The man ordered the same meal, but this time he said something else that made Thomas freeze up. He said, "I hope you have been enjoying those Whoppers, Mr. Hurley." Thomas stood there for a second, not saying anything. His brain could not catch up. His last name is Hurley, but he does not wear a name tag with his last name on it, and it is not posted anywhere customers can see. There was no reason at all that this guy should know his last name. Thomas started talking into the speaker, asking who this was, what he wanted, and how he knew his name. He must have asked, "Who is this?" 4 or 5 times, but he never answered, and this time he did not even pull up to pay. Thomas heard his engine rev and then he was gone. Thomas was rattled for the rest of his shift. There was nothing he could do, but he could not shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. When he got home after his shift, Thomas found a note on his doorstep. It was a handwritten note on yellow-lined paper that said, "I know what you did. You have 3 days." Thomas just stood there staring at it with his hand shaking, and he started feeling really sick, like someone had punched him in the gut. He had no idea what he supposedly did. He had been racking his brain, trying to think of anything that could explain this, but he had nothing. He did not have enemies or secrets. He was just a 24-year-old guy that worked at Burger King and played video games on his days off. He did not sleep that night. Instead, he just sat on his couch with the lights on, dreading whatever was going to happen next. But nothing happened. He had no choice but to just move on. It turned out he would not have to wait that long because the next night at work, that guy was back. This time, he did not even bother playing games. Instead of ordering food, he just asked Thomas to write something down. Then, before Thomas could even respond, he gave him an address. It was some random place on the outskirts of town, in an area he did not recognize. And then he told Thomas he had 2 days to deliver him $10,000. Thomas near laughed at that. He did not think he was serious, but he clearly was not kidding. As soon as he drove off, Thomas immediately went back to being terrified. There was absolutely no way he would be giving that guy $10,000. He did not even have $10,000, so he decided to ignore it. He figured it had to be some elaborate scam or a prank from someone he knew. He should have called the police right then, but he did not even think of that. 3 nights later, he thought things were over. He had not dropped any money off, and nothing had happened. But of course, he was wrong. He was sitting there watching television, winding down from his shift, when out of nowhere, he was jolted up by the sound of shattering glass. He hit the floor on instinct, thinking someone was shooting at him. But when he finally got up and looked around, he realized someone had just thrown a rock through his window. By the time he went to look outside, whoever had been there was long gone. This time, he called the police. He told them everything, including the address he had been given, and they said they would check it out and told him to stay vigilant. They really did not do much. They just told him they would patrol the area a little more closely, and that without any doorstep footage, which he obviously did not have, there was nothing they could do. And that was 3 days ago. Thomas had called in sick to work the last 3 nights, but he did not even think that was going to do anything since the guy clearly knew where he lived. He could not afford to not work, and he could not afford to move. So, he was stuck in this nightmare until the police could track that person down. He thought he might try getting them to track the credit card number that the guy used to pay for the Whopper meals. But other than that, he was not really sure what to do. Why he got targeted, he had no idea. Hopefully, things would not escalate from here. Now, let us transition to another story of a young man who faced a terrifying trap on a dark road. This driver had graduated from college about 8 months ago with a degree in communications. He was still living with his parents and had not been able to find a real job yet. In the meantime, he drove for Uber and Uber Eats, sometimes both in the same night, depending on what was popping. It was not a career, but it was money, and it let him feel like he was doing something productive while he figured his life out. He drove mostly on weekend nights, Friday and Saturday, usually from around 9 in the evening until 2 or 3 in the morning. That was when the surge pricing kicked in, and the drunk college kids need rides home from the bars downtown. This happened a few weeks ago on a Saturday night. It was maybe around 1:30, and he was about ready to call it. He was about to turn off the app when one more request came through. The pickup was downtown, which was fine, but the drop-off location was really far away, past the suburbs. He almost declined it for that reason, but the fare was too good. The girl he picked up was completely normal. The drive took about 40 minutes. By the time he dropped her off, it was past 2. And then he was alone, out in the middle of absolutely nowhere, with a long drive back to civilization. He turned the car around and started heading home. Not 10 minutes into the drive, he saw a car stopped in the middle of the road with its hazards on. He approached cautiously and realized there were 2 people standing in front of the car, waving their arms like they were trying to flag him down. His first instinct was actually not to stop, but he was someone who could not just ignore a person in need. So, against his better judgment, he decided to stop. He stopped the car about 20 feet away from them and rolled his window down a few inches, just enough to hear them, but not enough for someone to reach inside. It was a middle-aged couple, which actually put him at ease a little. That is, until they started talking. The woman did most of the talking. She had this frantic energy about her, but also something that felt slightly rehearsed, like she had given the speech before. She said they were warning drivers about a collapsed bridge ahead. She went on to say it happened earlier that day, and they had almost driven right off themselves. She pointed down the road into the darkness and said if he kept going that way, he would end up in the river. The driver asked them what he should do instead, and the husband spoke of a turnoff that was about halfway between where they were and the bridge. He said it cut through the woods, and that it would add some time to his drive, but it would get him back to the main highway without having to deal with the bridge. The driver thanked them and started driving, but something felt off. He did not know what it was, but he knew one thing. He was going to trust his gut and just drive the way he had been intending to go. About a mile down the road, he saw the turnoff they had been talking about. It was this narrow dirt path that disappeared into the trees, and it was barely wide enough for one car. He decided to keep driving, and a few minutes later, he reached the bridge. He slowed down a little, but it was fine. It was not collapsed for sure, and it did not even look damaged at all. He drove across it without any issues and made it back to the main highway a few minutes later. Even though nothing happened, The experience stuck with him to the point where he did not sleep well that night. He kept thinking about what would have happened if he had followed that couple's instructions, turning down that dirt road alone in the middle of the night. A few days later, the curiosity got the better of him, and he did something stupid. He drove back out there. It was the middle of the afternoon this time, broad daylight, which made him feel slightly less insane about the whole thing. He retraced his route from that night. Those people were not there this time, obviously. When he got to the turnoff, that dirt path into the woods, he slowed down and pulled over. To his surprise, there was something new. There was a sign nailed to a tree right at the entrance of the path that simply said, "Dead End." That sign had not been there before. He would have definitely noticed it that night, even in the dark. Someone had put it up in the last few days. He sat in his car for a minute, staring at the path. In the daylight, it did not look quite as ominous. It was just a narrow dirt road that disappeared into some dense trees. He wanted to explore it a little, but he was worried about his car getting stuck, so he decided to go on foot. He was not sure what he was expecting to find, but being that there was daylight out, he really was not scared at all. He turned off his engine. As soon as he stepped out of the car, though, he got a bad feeling. He stood there at the edge of the path, trying to see further down, but there was not much to see, really. He did not know what it was, but something about standing there and actually being out in the open discouraged him from walking in. Things went from 0 to 100 in about 2 seconds. As he was turning around and walking back to his car, he heard a scream ring out behind him. It was this awful scream, definitely a woman's, and it came from somewhere deep in the woods down the path. He was out of there instantly, speeding away. He has not been back to that spot since, but he cannot stop thinking about it. Our third story happened a few winters ago, when a young man named Marcus was working overnight security for a commercial warehouse complex. He was 26 and had been doing the job for 8 months. The shift ran from 11 at night to 7 in the morning, and he was always the only employee on the site. There was a supervisor he could call if something went wrong, but for the most part, it was just him and the cameras. The complex was in an industrial area on the edge of a small city that did not have much nightlife. Most nights followed the same routine. Clock in, do a walkthrough of the exterior, then settle into the security office to monitor the cameras, and every hour another patrol. The warehouse stored mostly industrial equipment and bulk supplies. Nothing particularly valuable. The night everything went sideways started pretty normally. It was cold enough for there to be snow falling, but nothing too heavy. He did his first patrol. Everything was secure, and he went back to the office. Around 1:30 in the morning, he got a motion alert on one of the loading dock cameras. This was not unusual. The system was sensitive, and wind or animals could trigger it. He pulled up the feed and watched for a minute, but everything looked normal. Just the empty dock and snow drifting past the floodlights. But the alerts kept coming. Every 10 or 15 minutes, the same camera would trigger. Each time he checked the feed, and each time he would see nothing. What started to bother him was that the movement always seemed to happen just at the edge of the frame, like something was there but not quite in view. By 2:30, he had maybe 6 or 7 alerts from the same camera. No other cameras were triggering, just that one. At 3 in the morning, he went outside to check it himself. The snow had mostly stopped, and the complex was dead silent. He walked the full perimeter of the dock area with his flashlight. He did not see anything unusual. All the bay doors were closed and locked, and there were no footprints in the snow except for his. He went back inside. About 20 minutes later, he heard a loud metallic scraping sound, like something heavy being dragged across concrete. It came from inside the warehouse somewhere deep in the building. He checked the interior cameras, but all 6 feeds showed empty aisles. He was starting to freak out a little, because he started feeling like he was being toyed with or watched. But still, he explained the noise away by chalking it up to the wind or something. An hour later, though, he heard it again. It was louder this time. The dragging sound was followed by a sharp bang, like something had struck one of the interior doors. He cycled through the cameras again. Nothing on 1 through 5. When he got to camera 6, though, the feed was black. Then came 3 seconds of static, and then it came back. But something was different. The angle had shifted just a few degrees to the left, like someone had bumped the camera or adjusted its position. At that point, he had no choice. He grabbed his flashlight and radio and headed into the warehouse. The interior was massive, probably 80,000 square feet of industrial shelving, arranged in long aisles. During the day, it was bright and full of forklifts. At night, the overhead lights were dimmed to save power, casting everything in this yellowish half-light. He was maybe halfway down the main aisle when he heard footsteps coming from somewhere to his left. It definitely sounded like a person walking maybe 2 or 3 aisles over. As soon as he stopped, the footsteps stopped too. He stood there trying to control his breathing. He remembered how tense it was, standing there in complete silence, waiting for a sound that he was not even sure would come. After what felt like forever, he could not take it anymore. He had to break the silence. In a firm voice, he announced his presence as security and insisted that whoever was there reveal themselves. But of course, there was no response. The rest of that patrol was utterly terrifying. He was bracing himself for a fight or some kind of confrontation, and the longer he surveyed without finding anyone, the worse that feeling got. But he ultimately finished his patrol without seeing another person, which was arguably worse because he knew with absolute certainty that there was someone in there. He did not see or hear anything for the rest of his shift, but that did not make him feel any better. He actually felt somewhat guilty. His job was simple, and he felt like he was messing it up in real time. But by the time 7 rolled around, he wanted nothing more than to just get out of there. He reported everything to his supervisor when he showed up on site. Maintenance did a full inspection, but did not find anything either. Even after everything was double and triple checked, no one was able to identify the method of entry, and he could tell people did not believe his story. Still though, that night remains one of the freakiest things that has ever happened to him. Our final story comes from a young man who worked his first job at a 24-hour gym during a gap year between high school and college. He worked a lot of night shifts. The gym was open 24 hours a day and accessed by keycard only, meaning often there were only 1 or 2 employees working. People could just check in, use the equipment, and leave. The whole facility pretty much managed itself. All entries, exits, and usage of equipment was processed digitally, so all he had to do was sit in the office and keep an eye on the cameras. He would occasionally get up and walk around, do some light cleaning, and even talk to some of the guests. This was in a pretty bad part of town, but for the most part, everyone was nice and friendly, and it was one of those gyms where everyone kind of knows each other, considering how few people really come in. This one night in particular, he was working from 8 at night until 6 in the morning, which is generally a very long, boring shift. But everything that happened that night keeps him up to this day. It was around 2 in the morning when he had already done multiple rounds around the building and finished all routine paperwork. He was exhausted, so he just figured he would sit down for a bit and monitor the cameras. Everything was normal at first. Not many people come in to work out in the middle of the night, but there were a couple of regulars who came and went. He had worked here for a few months, so almost everyone he recognized except one man. He first noticed him when he saw him using a treadmill in the far corner. Normally, this would not catch his attention as they have new guests from time to time. However, what really caught him off guard was how fast this man was running. He pulled up his treadmill number in the system, where he was able to monitor all equipment activity. The man was running 9 miles per hour, which was impressive already, but what really shocked him was the fact that he never stopped. 10 minutes went by, then 15. He never slowed or stopped. He looked closer at the camera, and although he cannot quite describe it in detail, this man was nothing short of unsettling. He was wearing ragged clothes. He had long, messy hair, and his face never moved once. He was just staring straight forward. Then he noticed his feet. He was barefoot. He had been running 9 miles per hour for 15 minutes barefoot, just staring into the distance. At this point in time, the worker was very weirded out, especially since he was now the only person in the building besides himself. He pulled himself together and realized that they do have a policy requiring shoes. so he decided he would use that as an excuse to go talk to him. Although his appearance really freaked him out, he got up the courage to leave the office and head out to talk to him. The machine he was on was located almost directly outside the employee hallway, and as soon as he turned that corner, his heart stopped. The treadmill was covered in blood. His feet were tearing apart as he ran. His heart dropped. Blood was not only dripping, but splattering from his feet and ankles for every step he took. His face was still stone cold, staring straight ahead. His mouth was wide open as he ran. He looked like he was on every drug on the planet. At this point, the worker was terrified. He looked crazy enough to the point that his gut was telling him he was dangerous. However, he still mustered up the courage to yell at him to stop. He cannot even remember exactly what he said, but he did have to raise his voice so he would hear him over the thudding of his feet as he sprinted. He did not say a word, or even turn his head for that matter. He just continued to sprint and stare forward with his mouth open. The worker yelled again, asking what he was doing. He then muttered the words, "Are you there?" in the coldest, raspiest voice. He was not out of breath or even panting as he spoke. The worker told him to stop a few more times, and he repeatedly just said, "Are you there?" The pool of blood at the end of the conveyor was growing, and at this point, he just figured he would call the cops. He went back to the office, picked up his phone, but before he called, he glanced at the monitors again. The man was staring directly at the camera, sprinting, bleeding, mouth open, staring at the camera. He turned away and then heard him screaming from outside the door. He was not even screaming words, just screaming at the top of his lungs as he stared through the camera. Suddenly, he hopped off the treadmill. He did not even turn it off, and he sprinted out of view. The worker immediately started clicking through the feed, searching for him, but he was out of view of every camera they had in the building. He had checked every camera except one, the employee hallway. Sure enough, there he was, about 6 feet from the office door, just standing there. He did not even know how he had gotten into this hallway without a key card, but he did not hesitate to quickly lock the door. Almost 5 seconds after he locked it, the doorknob rattled. Now he was calling the cops. The man started screaming again, and shaking the door as the worker explained to dispatch what was happening. They told him police were 5 minutes out, as he just waited in the corner of the office while this man was trying to get inside. His scream was terrifying. It was so deep it barely sounded human, and he kept it up for an unbelievably long time. This went on for about 3 minutes. The worker thought if he got in, he was going to die, and he felt absolutely helpless. Suddenly, the screaming stopped and the door did not move. He checked the cameras again and he was gone. He could not see him anywhere. Eventually, the police arrived, and he made them search the entire place before he would even leave the office. They told him he was nowhere to be found. He answered their questions and drove home. He quit the next day and has not entered that gym since. He still wonders what would have happened if he did not lock that door. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of today's episode in the comments. And remember, we have a whole playlist of true crime episodes ready for you to binge right now. Until next time, see ya.